This is Rich Volz with the Illinois Association of School Administrators, and this is going to be a tutorial video on how to use Excel to record teacher observations using the Danielson 3-column format. So what we're going to do here is set up a spreadsheet for you to use to do this work. There's going to be 6 columns altogether. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the 4th column, which is D1 on the spreadsheet, and I'm going to click on the line in the status bar and make that column bigger. This is going to end up being the column where we put on our evidence that will be scripting. And for this purpose, I'm going to center this particular cell, and I'm going to input in this cell the Danielson 3-column format, which would be a title for this spreadsheet. Then I'm going to skip row 2 and go to row 3. And in row 3, I'm going to put teacher name. You can see when I did that, the teacher name ended up being longer or wider than the row. So what I'm going to go do is I'm going to come up here to the gray box that's between the A and 1. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to format all the cells on this spreadsheet to take into account wrap text. So I check on alignment here. I go to wrap text and I say wrap text. That will make whatever I input fit the cell. And in this spot where we're going to be recording evidence, it will just keep on wrapping around the evidence as you record it. In the 2nd column, I'm going to put evaluator name. Now, for the teacher name and the evaluator name, we're just going to be entering that one time when we actually do the work, but we have to have a way of sorting by those columns. My 3rd column, or column C, is going to be date and time. The 4th column is going to be evidence, as I mentioned earlier. And really what you could do with this evidence is you could center it as well. In the 5th column, I'm going to put domain/component. Okay, so this is going to be later on what I do to try to get the domain/component for categorization of the work. And then in the 6th column, I'm going to put rating. Now, as we get into actually doing this work, you're going to find that we may in fact want to have more domain components than one. We may want to have several. So I may want to cut this rating and paste it over here and instead put in several domain components in here, because you could rate your evidence by more than one domain component. And then what I'm doing is just making that domain component fit that particular space that I have available. So then what we'd actually do when we're doing this work is we would put in the teacher's name that we're going to be observing, put in your name, and then you'd be putting in the date and time. So in this case, we might be putting in 8/27/2012. And then at this point, or in this space, you will be entering evidence that you see occurring in the classroom, like teacher is greeting students as students enter the room, and the teacher is entering into a personal discussion with each student. This is what might be happening when you're in the classroom. That, for example, would go into domain 2, and it would be 2A. Now, this also may be, in addition to 2A, maybe the teacher at the same time was handing out instructions for the students to do when they got to their seat. So that might be a 3A as well. What you also can do is take these columns and end up centering. So this would be a way you would be entering evidence into a worksheet. And what you can do then later, after you get some of this evidence in, you can later sort the evidence by domain, component, any other kind of information that you would want. You could sort this information, and it would come back to you then in a sorted list for you to use later on when you would bring this information back to be a type of database. Well, I hope this has helped you set up your worksheet for the teacher observation exercise we'll be using with the online academy. You should have this workbook set up prior to the academy in the form that I have just set up for you. You should save this particular file that you just did using a name that you would recognize later to use. I might use Danielson 3-column, and I would put that maybe on my desktop in a Danielson folder so that you would have it when you do the online academy. When we actually observe teaching, then you'll be ready to use this Excel spreadsheet. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them during the online academy.